The night was calm. Too calm. Northern California. Late 1960s and era remembered for peace, freedom, and music that spoke of love. People believed the future was bright. Doors were unlocked. Trust was everywhere. But evil thrives best where no one is watching. On quiet roads, young couples parked their cars beneath open skies. Radios played softly. Laughter echoed into the trees. They believed they were alone. They were wrong. Somewhere in the darkness, a presence existed, silent, patient, and invisible. He did not rush. He did not panic. He observed. He waited. Evil, when it is intelligent, always waits. This was not random violence. This was not anger. This was the beginning of a ritual. A rehearsal for something far greater. A human predator studying his prey. No one heard footsteps. No warning came. Just the sound of the night. And then sudden terror. America slept peacefully unaware that fear had just been born. Gunshots ripped through silence differently at night. Louder, sharper. Final metal shattered. Glass exploded. Screams were swallowed by darkness. The attacker did not speak. He did not hesitate. He executed his act with terrifying calmness. If he had already imagined this moment 1,000 times. Then, nothing, no witnesses. No chase. No face. Only bodies and questions. Police arrived believing it was a simple crime. A robbery gone wrong. A jealous rage. Anything but not what it truly was. They did not yet understand they were dealing with a mind that craved something far more. Powerful than murder. He wanted recognition. He wanted fear. And above all, he wanted to be remembered. This first act was not about killing. It was about announcement. Weeks passed. Then months. Then it happened again. Another couple. Another remote location. Another silent execution. Patterns began to surface slowly, painfully. Investigators noticed similarities. Same calm brutality. Same timing. Same escape into darkness. Fear began to spread, not loudly, but quietly. Parents warned children. Couples stopped parking. Radio spoke in hushed tones. But the killer? He was not hiding. He was preparing. Every crime sharpened him. Every escape emboldened him. And somewhere, in a room lit by a single lamp, he began to write. Words, symbols, threats. The monster was learning how to speak. The murders alone were not enough for him. Somewhere deep inside the mind of the Zodiac Killer lived a hunger far more disturbing than violence, a hunger to be heard. It began quietly, with envelopes appearing at newspaper offices. Ordinary on the outside, but inside they carried something unnatural, something cold and deliberate. The letters were not rushed. They were written with patience, with confidence, with the unmistakable tone of a man who believed he was smarter than everyone reading his words. He described his crimes not with guilt, but with pride, correcting police reports, mocking investigators, and demanding that his messages be published or he would kill again. This was the moment when murder transformed into psychological warfare. Fear no longer belonged only to crime scenes. It traveled through ink and paper, through headlines and breakfast tables, into every home. The Zodiac Killer understood something terrifyingly well. People fear what they cannot see, but they obsess over what speaks to them. And now, the killer had found his voice. Then came the moment that sealed his immortality. In one letter, written with chilling calm, the killer signed a name Zodiac, followed by a strange symbol that looked more like a mark than a signature, as if he were branding the world itself. From that instant, fear became personal. The Zodiac was no longer an unknown attacker. He was an identity, a character, a presence that could be named but never caught. Newspapers splashed his words across front pages, unknowingly feeding exactly what he wanted. Attention? Every published letter tightened his grip on the city. Every headline amplified his power. Parents locked doors earlier. Couples canceled dates. Police stations flooded with calls from terrified citizens who believed every shadow could be him. The Zodiac Killer did not need to be everywhere. His name was enough. He had turned himself into an idea, and ideas are far harder to kill than men. Inside some letters were codes, complex symbols arranged like puzzles from another mind. Another world, and the Zodiac promised that they contained his identity, daring police and civilians alike to decode them. When one cipher was finally cracked, the message revealed something far worse than a name. It exposed his philosophy. He wrote that killing was more fun than hunting animals, that people were merely things to be collected in the afterlife, stripping human life of all meaning. Yet other ciphers remain unsolved even today, despite decades of effort, modern computers, and artificial intelligence. This is what makes them terrifying, not just that they exist, but that they still resist understanding. Some believe the unsolved codes are meaningless taunts. Others fear they contain truths we are not meant to know. And as long as those symbols remain unread, the Zodiac Killer continues to whisper from the past, reminding the world that some monsters are never finished speaking. Until now, the Zodiac Killer had existed only as a shadow scene, only in the aftermath of violence, imagined through letters and symbols. But one night, he stepped fully into reality. At a quiet lakeside, beneath the cold glow of moonlight, a figure emerged wearing a dark hood, his face completely hidden, his body marked with the same symbol that haunted newspapers across California. This was no hurried disguise. It was a costume carefully designed to terrify. His movements were calm, controlled, almost ritualistic, as if he were acting out a role he had rehearsed endlessly in his mind. Survivors later described his voice as steady, emotionless, chillingly ordinary proof that the most frightening monsters do not scream or rage. They speak softly. In that moment, fear took physical form. The Zodiac was no longer just a name on paper. He was a presence standing inches away, breathing the same air, proving that evil does not always hide, sometimes wants to be seen. After the blood dried and silence returned, the Zodiac did something even more disturbing. He called the police. Not in panic, not in fear, but with a voice so calm it felt unreal, as though he were reporting a minor inconvenience rather than murder. From public phones, he described his crimes with unsettling precision, offering directions, details, corrections, enjoying the knowledge that officers were listening to a killer who was already gone. These calls were not about confession. They were about dominance. In those moments, the Zodiac controlled the narrative, forcing law enforcement to hear him on his terms, reminding them that they were always one step behind. Each call deepened the terror gripping the city, because it revealed a truth far worse than violence itself, that the man responsible felt no urgency, no danger, no regret. He had time, and people with time are the most dangerous of all. By now, San Francisco was no longer living, it was waiting. Waiting for the next headline, waiting for the next letter, waiting for the next body. Every unfamiliar face became suspicious. Every quiet moment felt wrong. Every ringing phone triggered fear. The Zodiac Killer had achieved something few criminals ever do. He had transformed everyday life into a state of constant anxiety. Police patrols increased, sketches were distributed, and yet none of it mattered, because the true battlefield was no longer the streets, it was the human mind. People imagined him everywhere, watching from cars, from windows, from across crowded sidewalks. And somewhere, perhaps among them, he walked freely, absorbing the fear he had created. knowing that as long as he remained unseen, he remained unstoppable. The Zodiac was no longer just killing people, he was slowly suffocating an entire city with dread. When the fear reached its peak, the hunt began, but it was never the kind of hunt people imagine. It was not fast, not heroic, not triumphant. It was slow, confused, and filled with mistakes. Detectives chased shadows, followed tips that led nowhere, and collected names that promised closure but delivered nothing. Suspects appeared and vanished, each one briefly wearing the face of the Zodiac before collapsing under scrutiny. Some were eccentric, some violent, some disturbingly ordinary. Each suspect brought hope, and each failure deepened the public's despair. The more investigators searched, the clearer it became that the Zodiac Killer had designed his crimes to resist resolution. He left just enough evidence to tease, but never enough to trap. The case grew heavier with time, accumulating paperwork, theories, and unanswered questions, until the investigation itself became a maze with no exit. Decades passed, and science promised salvation. DNA analysis, forensic databases. And later, artificial intelligence offered new hope that technology could succeed where humans had failed. Old letters were re-examined, stamps tested, envelopes handled with surgical precision. Yet each breakthrough ended the same way, with uncertainty. Partial matches, contaminated samples, leads that dissolved under closer inspection. Some investigators believed the Zodiac intentionally manipulated evidence, while others suspected law enforcement errors doomed the case from the start. Mistaken eyewitness accounts, conflicting descriptions, jurisdictional rivalries, reflaw created cracks the killer slipped through. The truth became unbearable. The Zodiac had not escaped justice by chance alone. He escaped because the system built to stop him was never prepared for someone who treated crime as a game. The most disturbing question is not who the Zodiac was, but what happened to him. Did he die quietly, his secret buried with him? Did he grow old, blending into society, watching documentaries about himself, smiling at theories that missed the mark? Or did he simply stop because he had already won? The silence after his final confirmed letter was not comforting, it was ominous. A predator does not always disappear because it is gone. Sometimes it disappears because it no longer needs to act. The Zodiac left behind a mystery so perfectly incomplete that even his absence feels intentional. And as years turned into decades, one realization began to settle in the minds of investigators and civilians alike. The hunt had failed not because the Zodiac was a ghost, but because he was human, and humans can hide in plain sight. Long after the murders stopped, long after the letters ceased, the name remained. The Zodiac Killer did not vanish from the world, he migrated into it, embedding himself into culture, conversation, and endless digital searches. Every year, millions of people type his name into search bars, asking the same questions in different forms. Who was the Zodiac Killer? Was the Zodiac ever caught? Are the Zodiac ciphers solved? Each search resurrects him, each click keeps the story breathing. True crime documentaries replay his letters, podcasts dissect his psychology. Online forums argue over suspects with religious intensity. Technology has changed, generations have passed, yet the fascination has only grown stronger. This is the Zodiac's final triumph, not that he escaped capture, but that he achieved permanence. He became a mystery without an expiration date, a shadow that stretches endlessly into the future. In the age of artificial intelligence and limitless information, people still attempt what police could not summon: the truth from the past. Amateur cryptographers, machine learning models, and obsessive researchers analyze the Zodiac's letters as if performing a digital seance, hoping technology can speak to the dead. Some claim breakthroughs. Some swear they have solved the final cipher. But certainty never arrives. Each new theory collapses under scrutiny. Each answer spawns 10 new questions. What remains is something unsettling. The realization that the Zodiac's greatest weapon was not his gun or his knife, but ambiguity. By leaving behind incomplete puzzles, he ensured that no conclusion would ever feel final. The mystery survives because it cannot be finished, and in that endless uncertainty, the Zodiac continues to control the narrative from beyond his era. The most terrifying possibility is not that we failed to catch the Zodiac Killer, but that catching him was never the point. Perhaps his true goal was to prove something far darker, that fear can outlive flesh. That identity can be stronger than evidence, that a man can become a legend simply by never being understood. The Zodiac forced the world to confront an uncomfortable truth that some stories do not end with justice, that some monsters do not receive punishment, and that closure is not guaranteed. And as this story ends, as the screen fades to black, one final thought remains. Cold and unsettling. Somewhere, sometime, someone learned from him. Because the Zodiac did not just leave behind victims, he left behind a blueprint for becoming immortal through fear. This was Mystery Archive. Some mysteries are not meant to be solved, only remembered.